Welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Future of AI and ITSM, Expert Insights on the State of Agentic AI Report. And Julie, I'll hand it off to you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello, my name is Julie Mohr. I am a principal analyst with Forrester, and my primary coverage area is IT service management. And of course, we have this new thing called Agentic AI that's making quite a splash. So looking forward to talking with you guys today.
Great. Thank you, Julie. My name is Kashif Mahbub. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at Aisera. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And yes, seems like this little thing called Agentic AI is taking over conversation. So we'll be diving deep. I know we are going to cover a specific survey report that Aisera just ran, but lots more to cover on that. Rahul, over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Kashif. This is Rahul Guha. I'm the VP Head of Product at Aisera. Been in the enterprise software space with companies like ServiceNow, as well as MuleSoft in the past, and very encouraged to see how the whole premise of workflows and RPA have transformed itself into agentic AI, and how ITSM is benefiting from this particular shift. Lots to talk about. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So before we dive deeper into what we've all learned from this survey, just a quick check on what are we running into, or what, enterprises, and specifically the CIO organizations, CTO organizations, folks who manage IT in large enterprise scale service management organizations. What are they running into? How they are thinking about not just AI, but the day-to-day business of running IT service tasks. So lots of challenges there. Operationalizing everything at enterprise scale, of course, is very different from logging into ChatGPT and asking your questions. And so today, one of the things I think would be great, Julie and Rahul, to cover is that chasm that we see, that the B2C approach of, just having a field where you can, in ChatGPT or Claude or other such tools, you can ask a question and you get an immediate answer, which is immediate value. There's almost no gap between, a question going in and the answer coming out. Of course, things are very different in enterprise scale. There's a lot of integrations to be done. There are lots of security measures that you need to think about. But in the end, there are humans interacting with humans, and systems have been, developing and playing the bridge role between everything. And so operationalizing is key. So Rahul, you have some key ideas about, since you have seen it day to day as well, and you continue to do that as Sarah, I think what you coin as the 5 deadly sins, you want to expand on that a little bit, what you think about that?
Sure. No, this is coming out of a lot of conversations with customers, and recently there was a study that, hey, many of this enterprise AI projects are not seeing the ROI that the agentic AI promises. And don't get me wrong. I mean, agentic AI is a transformative technology, but we have to be very careful about the tenets which need to be addressed in order to operationalize agentic AI in the organization. Based on our experience and having worked with large customers for their AI transformation, it just boils down to 5 things that organizations need to be addressing. One is the employee experience. Yes, we talk about hard ROI, soft ROI, but at the end of the day, if the employee experience is not up to the mark, people are not going to use it, which means that we have to meet the users where they are, using a variety of different channels at the time where they need the most help. Governance is key. AI is great, but if we have the AI kind of not take into account user credentials, or not have a strong security posture around it, it's going to fail. Time to value is key. How do we make sure that organizations don't have to spend 6 months in POC, then another 2 years trying to operationalize it? How do we bring in constructs like out-of-the-box connectors, ready to be used AI agents into the mix to prove quick time to value. For the vendor control, I feel it's extremely important because this is going to be a very federated AI agentic space. There will be multiple different vendors. So having a platform that is locked in with a single vendor is, not a good idea. So we envision a world where, AI, agentic AI is able to, leverage, vendor-specific agents, but provide the single front door experience for the end employee, not having to go to many different portals slash AI agents, but having the same kind of governance and governance control around it. The last but not the least is about future proofing. A lot of times organizations would go into would place their bet on a single kind of technology only to see that the industry has moved on, technology has moved on, and what was considered as really relevant at that time is not the way to think about it anymore. Think about MCP, A2A, agency, all the different protocols that are coming in from an agentic AI perspective. So that is really important. What this boils down to, if you go to the next slide, is adoption is key. So unless we have taken into account the 5 deadly sins from an operationalizing perspective, we will not see the type of adoption that will drive agentic AI to be a transformative technology. So that's why any organization thinking about operationalizing AI, we need to keep track of these 5 different aspects of the operationalization.
Yeah, no, that's Julie, I think this is one of those areas where you probably have a much broader view. You talk to a lot of clients, both on the vendor side as well as enterprises who are actually users of the various technologies. And you have, I know, some strong views about adoption itself. Do you mind expanding a little bit there?
Sure. I think, just starting with the experience one, I've gotten some pushback with my research around, one of the critical points is getting rid of phone support, right? That we have had this attachment to phone support for 3 decades, and there's a reason why. We did not have a lot of data that we gathered around endpoints. And so we really didn't know what was going on. We had to wait for the customers to call us and let us know. So now they've become dependent on something. So how do we move to this new model where customers are moving away from using the phone? And it all comes down to the experience. If that experience is frictionless, if it's personalized, if we know more about those machines than the end user does, why would they call us? We already have all the information that we need to know that something is going on within their desktop. So when I look at the future view of an AI-centric service desk, it's, the reality is that the technology is going to get us there. Whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 years, we're going to get there. But your organization is not going to be able to take advantage of that technology if what you're developing isn't focused on creating an exceptional experience for your end users. It needs to be something that gives such a power of pull that they're willing to give up these long-standing ways in which they interacted with our organization. So, when I look at that, experience is definitely very top of mind on my list of things that organizations need to be aware of when they're building, the future of IT service management.
Going to agree more. I think there is an aspect of use cases. And so, for example, at Aisera, we've seen some of our customers, large customers like Aramark, where their field personnel delivering, equipment, delivering, through the supply chain, there is a part of the organization that could be out in the field. And I think that's where the technology and experience part plays the biggest role. If they get locked out of their accounts, today they have to call in. And so today the dependence is on the phone. But I see that, to your point about how it should be so seamless that that call-in should not be needed, or it should be through another digital channel. One of the things we have introduced at Aisera is silent listening. And so silent listening agents that are, I'll give you a very simplistic example, and then I promise we will dive into the survey as well. I'm sure folks are waiting about that. If my computer today that we are working on, it starts, the performance slows down. We have agents that are silently listening into that performance, and it can pop up and say, hey, I see that you're having issues running multiple applications. Would you like me to run diagnostics? And all you have to do is click yes, and it automatically runs diagnostics. And then comes back and says, too many Chrome windows are open. Nothing against Chrome, but it's a memory hog. And so it can close the windows for you, or it can even check, hey, seems like the desktop or laptop you're using is 4 years old. I see from your IT policy that you're due for an upgrade. Would you like me to get an approval from your manager? Click yes, goes and gets an approval, and the laptop gets delivered in 2 days. And so all of this is proactive as opposed to somebody actively worrying and trying to solve these issues. So I think there is that aspect, which, back to your point, it's all about the experience, whoever delivers a better experience. And so there's a lot more to talk about that as we go forward. Great. I think time to jump into the survey itself, Joanna. We ran this survey with Gatepoint Research. This is the cross-section of the various types of persona who answered our questions. So a little bit about the demographics of the audience that we're answering. So it's not just the CIOs, it's the engineers and architects, it's the managers who are dealing with call centers. Sometimes it's a large portion of them where the middle level layer that deals with has to provide the efficiency view of AI to their CIOs and CTOs. And then they also have to manage the day-to-day operational aspect of and choosing the vendors and choosing the tools. So that's why you see a lot of directors that's involved in this study. And so good cross-section, I think. And so now I think we can, Joanna, dive into the questions themselves. Okay. No surprises here. Very first question, what's the top request type you get? And I think we are nobody surprised, almost 60% are account lockout. So my password is not working. I cannot log into the email or the technical troubleshooting that I just mentioned. And so, Rahul, thoughts on that?
No, it is definitely not surprising. In fact, across all the customer base, of course, I mean, completely anonymized and with all sorts of PII data removed, we ran an aggregate study of what are the top ticket drivers across, segments of organizations like mid-market, commercial, enterprise, small enterprise. And it was strikingly the same, like when we did the insight analysis or the top ticket drivers, it was very similar to what what you got back as a result of the survey, which is good news because then agentic AI becomes quite horizontal for IT service management. If you think of easily starting to get value, going back to the time to value aspect of the 5 deadly sins, if you have out of the box agents for most of these common actions, you can get started right away.
Right. Julie, I know that you've spoken about the AI-centric service desk. You've run this as a business in your past as well. What's your first-hand experience tells us here?
So the data is very typical of what we would expect to see. But when I look at that list, I'm thinking how much of this can be automated and automated with success. There's been an amount of difficulty in the past related to self-service. End users, the amount of adoption, they've tried, it didn't work, the frustration builds. But when we bring in the agentic element to that, the ability to be able to know what's the next best action? What should we be doing in order to resolve this? Takes away some of that, the ownership by the end user, so that it takes the mystery out of it for them. They're not having to go through steps that are repetitive, that don't yield results. And we're putting more into the technology layer, more intelligence into that technology layer. So when I look at this list, I think, wow, this is tremendous opportunity for technology to create a vastly different experience for our end users.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we look at, the cross-section of use cases here, there's everything from hardware procurement to email distribution lists. And so all of these use cases, go beyond just ITSM as well. I think there's ITSM plus HRSM, if you will. They're kind of combined here. So if an employee is moving from, California to Chicago office, they need to be logged in and entered into distribution lists and things like that. And so there's a lengthy process there. There's HR policies as well as IT policies. So there are lots of questions that come up. I was just on a call just before this conversation. And as we talked about the password reset, it was a prospective buyer, and they were like, okay, those are very, ground level cases. What about some of the more complex ones? Agentic AI is great at the more complex ones. It is just built for that, but it remains to be, most of the cases that we are dealing with today, the reason why we see 60% is that this low-hanging base level cases are still predominantly overwhelming the service desk. So that's why we see a lot of them coming up. So it's absolutely the table stake question there. And then it goes from there. So as a vendor, taking care of these, automating 80, 85, 90% of these requests right out of the box with self-service more than anything. I think the autonomous nature of agentic AI is super critical here that delivers the experience that we are talking about here. All right, moving forward. So on average, what percent of your IT service tech desk is committed to handling low priority tickets, L1, L2? So first request comes in, second request. I think there's a good cross section. I know, Julie, you've run this type of business in the past. Thoughts on this? What are we missing in this picture, if anything?
Again, part of our whole design of a service desk for the longest time has been to have these different levels to act like a funnel, right? Taking as much as you can from level 1 and only passing to level 2, what actually requires those resources to resolve. It was a way for us to create operational efficiency given the amount of demand that we have. So as we bring in, these technologies and we're creating an automated level 1, kind of changes the dynamics of how things will be resolved from that point forward. It's likely we're going to see that escalations don't happen in the future, right? We're doing more swarming, bringing the right resources together in order to resolve something that's new that we haven't seen before. And then, of course, building the technology when appropriate to manage that moving forward. So the skill sets are going to be a much higher level of not just resolution capability, but also the ability to build that automation. But a lot of those entry level L1 type skill sets, that technology is going to, handle that type of work quite effectively. So it's really going to change the model of how we apply our resources. They'll be focused more on value-added work.
Yeah. I think MTTR, mean time to resolution, it remains to be seen how long that will be the key metric out there. Today, it very much is. We ourselves at Aisera, our products get measured on that, call centers get measured on that. But Rahul, the FCR, first contact resolution, you and I were talking about that. I think this is all about that, right?
Yeah, so I think the true north metric for agentic AI for us as an agentic AI vendor, right, is not MT is not going to be MTTR, right? It is going to be auto resolution rate. and monthly active users. So from an adoption perspective, how many users are using using agentic AI to solve their things by themselves, and if they are successful or not, that is measured by the auto resolution rate, right? So if you think of the traditional metrics like FCR essentially becomes like from first contact resolution to auto resolution rate. Uh, the other fact that I wanted to kind of bring up is that uh, the lot of these issues are discussed in Slack channels and stuff. Agentic AI has the capability to listen in on as a third party observer in the Slack channels, in the Teams channel, and without even the user saying that, hey, I have this problem, right? Decipher that, hey, there is an incident, there is an issue here, right? So going back to that proactive posture that Julie was talking about, right? It can identify that and start solving. So it is about it's about how agentic AI becomes that enhances that proactive and the preemptive posture of the organization and drives first contact resolution at the L0, right? I mean, we are not even talking about L1 anymore. We are talking about L0, which is self-service.
Yeah. So
We-
how? Sorry, Julie, go ahead.
I was going to say that we've actually introduced two new metrics to that AI-centric service desk. One is no contact resolution. So that's where
There you go.
observability, those kinds of things are coming in and they're resolving it before there's even an issue.
Yep.
And then the second one is low contact resolution. This is where the end user is in the loop and they're seeking help, but technology is predominantly providing that response. And so by distinguishing what's happening without downtime occurring, what's happening when there is disruption with technology, and then what happens as the organization begins to manage something with humans, I believe that the three different metrics are going to be critical because over time, you want to start seeing the numbers shift from being resolved by humans to happening in the loop to happening now without disruption occurring. And I think we need to track those ongoing.
It
That's an
seems like
excellent
there's a analogy here to what's happening to the programming and coding world, where everybody's worried about the junior programmers because a lot of that is getting automated. But without getting into the politics of that, because that's always a big worry right now for the fresh grads coming out, there's a very interesting question. If we continue to focus on L1 support for AI, how will we develop employees to L2 support? What does entry-level position IT support look like? I think, Julie, you addressed some of that already, that if there is a no contact part of it, seems like a lot of L1 will turn into L0 getting automated out. And so is it all about leveling up your skill set? Are we going straight? What are we looking at in the near and future and beyond?
This to me, I get this question a lot, like, what are we going to do about skill sets? And honestly, we as leaders have to be thinking about this and looking forward and building the skill sets that are necessary. There will be a lack of skill sets. There will no longer be this bridge where you bring somebody in and they get, acclimated to the environment for a couple years and then they get promoted in through the different levels of the organization. So that's not that's a management and a leadership challenge. That means bringing people in, putting them through, mini university tracks that get them to the skill sets that are needed to be supportive in your environment. You're not going to be able to just find seasoned individuals. Organizations that commit to training and upskilling are going to be wonderful places to go and work. Those that just believe, let's cut as many people as we can, put technology in place, and then they're on a path that they're going to run into troubles down the road. So, to me, it's a leadership issue. It's a management issue. There is no substitute for leadership, understanding these dynamics and building an appropriate path for people, new onboarding and those that are within the organization today.
Yep. Rahul, one follow-up question before we move on. You mentioned let me ask a question about how you mentioned learning from the tickets that are coming in and then getting the system to be ready. Is it clustering? How are we doing it? How are we preparing the system already to answer a question preempt a question. How do we do that today?
So there are a couple of different aspects, right? If you go back to what I was mentioning from a ticket learning perspective, this is not new, right? I mean, from a service desk management perspective, we always had a sense of how do we cluster, how do we understand what are the top topics and stuff. What has changed from a technology perspective is deep research. Okay, so we can have deep research agents that are providing way more granularity and also making service desk managers aware of some of the nuances within password reset, for example. Okay, and now comes the aspect of, hey, why are we getting so many password reset requests suddenly, right? Why are we suddenly getting so many VPN related issues? If I were to be able to step back and go back all the way to the change that was introduced, right? So going back into the whole ITSM data management process in that pipeline, and with agentic AI, ingesting and indexing vast amounts of data that is possible, we now have the ability to say that, hey, remember that firmware upgrade that happened on the Meraki VPN server that is most likely causing this issue. So it's a continuous learning process. It's not just human in the loop. It's also, how far do I get back in that value stream, right, to understand what's going on. And that is incredibly important. To Julie's point, I mean, no contact resolution is predicated on our ability to understand what is happening in the environment, right? At even the machine level, right? Operational monitoring level, and that's what we are doing.
What's the primary way your employees interact with their IT support? This is a channel question. What is the most prevalent channel? Rahul, you touched on that a little bit. Microsoft Teams, Slack, so on and so forth. We are not surprised there, but Julie, to your point about phone being the second most prevalent channel here. Julie, we can spend, I think, a few minutes on this. Your take is phones are going away. I gave an example of, there are use cases where phones are still sort of important until we have a better channel. Any surprises here?
No, and I've actually spoken with a couple clients recently where they actually have a target time frame of when phones will no longer be available. Again, that queuing was necessary because when an outage occurred, we'd get a flood of phone calls and we'd need a mechanism to kind of have them come in, track what's going on, right? It was all based on the need to create a ticket to follow a workflow. And, with the power and the capabilities of these systems within a chat channel, you were just mentioning earlier around how, it can identify that we have an issue, we can track it, we can create a ticket, all the data that we're gathering as we're working with a customer or pulling off of our observability, all that information is really rich information that can go into that ticket. We don't have to talk to a customer anymore to get the details. That was a thing of the past, right? When we had to wait for our customers to report something. So, the chat channel, we can use voice in that chat channel. If we want to kind of move customers over in a gradual path, they can still talk to somebody. But definitely the need for us to gather information from the customer is decreasing. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So that the need for phone support is going away quite quickly.
Yeah. Rahul, any thoughts?
No, I think I totally agree with Julie. The only point that I would raise here is, we have come across some customers where the field workers, right, they don't have access to, sometimes they don't have even access to internet. Like, one of the customers is a mining organization. Okay, so I think there will still be these pockets where we would still need to have a little bit of non-digital support, if I may put it that way, right? But it is definitely going to be an exception rather than the norm.
Yep. No, agreed on that.
Before
All
we
right.
move on to the next slide, we do have a question from the audience from an earlier part of the conversation, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
So he said, where do you see the industry trending when it comes to executing an agentic AI project? A traditional fixed fee project where a client expects us to build and operate via subscription-based model, which I believe is premature for agentic AI programs.
Julie, you want to take that on? We, of course, have our own take on how we are thinking of price modeling for agentic AI. I would love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, from a pricing perspective, we're all over the roadmap. You know, and part of the issue that is coming from this is we don't truly understand demand. This is a very expensive capability that we're building, right? There's a lot of press around the amount of data centers and things that we're going to need to power all of this, and the expense to our environment as well. So pricing models, you know, are kind of, the analogy I like to use is they're a lot like what we did with cell phones early on, right? Where demand far exceeded any of the vendors' you know, predictions. And so what did they have to do? They had to come in and do things like, okay, you get this much for free, but if you go over that, we're going to hammer you with overage charges. That helped to keep us contained within a pricing program. But it did very little to damper customer appetite. I used to get the overage charges all the time, and I mean, they hurt, but it was like, but I had to use the phone, right? So then they started with other programs like free nights and weekends, where, you know, you could push the demand into non-business times. So we're kind of following a same progression where demand is very high. We don't truly understand what that demand is going to look like consistently moving forward. So we're all over the roadmap with pricing schemes. Some companies are just saying, yep, you get it for free. And others are saying, yeah, we're going on a, you know, some sort of consumption-based model. I guarantee it, those that are, you know, kind of saying, oh, we're going to bundle it for free, they are really right now trying to figure out what that demand looks like so that they can come up with an appropriate way to price it. Either their licensing costs go up in their premier, you know, packaging in order to cover those costs, or, you know, they'll move to some sort of consumption or additional charge related to AI. But right now we're in a very, very unsettled area as it relates to pricing, and I don't anticipate that that's going to change, but we'll definitely see change for sure.
Agreed. Rahul, I know that's your favorite topic, right?
No, I think consumption-based pricing is, we are seeing that from many vendors, right? I mean, Salesforce introduced flex credits. We ourselves, you know, meter by the number of requests and events that are being handled by agentic AI. But what I find interesting and very intriguing, to be honest, is how can I tie this to business value? How can I do value-based pricing like, you know, just a step above from simple consumption? How do I know that a password reset for this organization is more important than an email distribution list upgrade, right? If I may, right? I mean, so uh, I think the more granular we can be about, you know, the value that agentic AI is delivering, all right, and it sort of correlates with the cost to support that request from an agentic AI LLM large action model perspective, uh, or maybe not, right? But I'm very interested to explore that, right, and see. But it's not easy to go ahead and say that, oh, for you this means this ticket is $2 versus this other ticket is like a few cents because this is more important. But I think, like Julie mentioned, it's a very evolving area. But this is where I think innovative organizations are going to come up with some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, so great question. Just one more minute on that, Joanna, because that is, believe it or not, one of my favorite topics. So I'll, you know, at the risk of using that big C word, commoditization, we saw that happen in the cloud environment. The analogy between cloud and what's happening with generative AI foundational models is pretty clear. When cloud came out, pricing was just as complex in the beginning, and folks spent some time to figure it out. And today we don't even think about it. We go and we get an EC2 instance, and it just and we build our business on top of that. Foundational frontier models today are where cloud was in the early days, where OpenAI and Anthropic and Google are working, and spending, Julie, to your point, but tens of billions of dollars setting up these data centers. We read about them every morning we wake up. There's a lot of investment going into that. However, I don't think, and so today every CIO, CTO is thinking about the tokenization of their entire IT base, for example, or infrastructure. Am I going to be worrying about how many tokens I'm spending? I don't think it's going that way. Today is the reality is already frontier and foundational models are getting settled just like cloud was settled. Players like Aisera and companies like us, we build that agentic AI application layer on top of that. We are agnostic to whatever foundational model you're using. So pricing is a function of that in terms of, to Rahul's point about business value, whoever figures out first as to what is the most simplistic. Aisera is using a request-based model combined with a few other factors. Salesforce is using conversational models, the flex rate that Rahul mentioned. So the conversations are on. Sorry, there's not a straight answer to this question because nobody has that answer right now. Everybody's testing, but there are some ground realities. Foundational model, sorry, last point on this. Aisera just ran a study a couple of months ago in collaboration with Stanford's, human AI researchers. And the goal was to come up with evaluation benchmarks, how to evaluate agents and their performance, and not just worry about accuracy, but about cost as well. And what came out was domain-specific agents are a tenth of the cost of building an agent on top of a foundational model like Anthropic or like OpenAI. That data point is huge when it comes to future pricing models. And so there's going to be a lot of verticalization. There's going to be a lot of domain specificity. By domain, I mean IT, HR, finance, and so forth. So stay tuned. This is getting resolved by a lot of players in the market. And I don't think it will be more than 6 months or so before we will have some settled pricing models here. Yep. All right. How you rate your organization's current adoption. Julie, you touched on this earlier on. There's not a lot of adoption going on. Are there any surprises here?
No, I think the biggest thing that I see coming from adoption is that clients are picking very specific use cases. They're trying these things out. They're seeing the value of them. But when I say, have you benchmarked? What is the value for the business? Do you have the data to support selling to executives an expansion of your agentic AI? It's like they got their feet in the water, but they're not quite ready to jump in yet. So I think this will expand over time as people grow in the confidence that the platforms can execute and do things with a high degree of confidence. But I think that understanding value is something that is so underexplored.
Yes.
Both by the customers and by the vendors. I mean, why are we not creating agents that are doing nothing but understanding where's value being created? That's an important question that we're always asked for decades. Do more with less. I have never had an operational role where that hasn't been a primary motivation of executives. So how are we proving to executives that this is allowing us to do more with less, whatever less is and whatever more is?
Yep. Rahul, we are seeing this from a very similar prism, that there is a lot of interest. Every CIO has been given a budget by her board that, hey, go spend on AI. So there's a lot of interest, but adoption, to Julie's point, remains up in the air in terms of the fast ROI. What are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, so I'm actually very encouraged with the 9% number there for full AI integration into our ITSM. So would love to kind of explore a little bit deeper into what kind of use cases there are. But one thing I'm fully kind of aligned with what we're talking about is the value aspect of it. In fact, so much so that in our pre-sales motion, one of the stages, one of the gates that we have is business value assessment. We have a BVA process where we essentially have a template based on the ticket learning that we have done, where we go ahead and ask that how important is this for your business, right? And given that we have a good understanding of the number of tickets, how many employees, we are able to put in those numbers in a spreadsheet and come up with, I mean, this is not perfect, right? But some directionally accurate predictions of what the kind of savings that we can see, which is very effective for us from a explaining the value of agentic AI to the executive perspective. So absolutely important. We need to do more, and I love the idea of having an AI agent whose only job is to in real time compute the value of automation.
I
Agreed.
just trademarked that, by the way, can't have
Absolutely good.
it.
An awesome idea.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's back to that. Most of the technology platforms run into the human change management and the opposing forces that are prevalent across enterprises. So I look at the same 9%, and it's great factor. There's a lot of opportunity there. All right,
Can I speak to that
please,
9% very quickly?
Sure.
please.
I have spoken with clients that are absolutely all in and are getting great results. What distinguishes them from others is their very strong partnership with the vendor. The vendor is, trying to get more customers that are fully on a platform, and they're working very carefully with them to create functionality that is very tangible in its ROI, that is, got all the right guardrails and risks under control. And they're getting fantastic results, but that's a very close partnership that's really driving that full adoption.
Okay, then that's a build versus buy question, right? And so that MIT study that Rahul was talking about, I think I've had the fun experience of being at a CMO event, and I had to beg people to stop asking me about that study. Yes, I've read it. Yes, I've posted about it. Everybody knows what that study says. But to your point, is this that big build versus buy question, that do we just, as an enterprise buyer or as a CIO, do I go and just work with a vendor to get their platform, or do I build it in-house? Julie, is that what you're talking about, or is it something in between?
No, it's more of, so the vendors are all over the roadmap too. We're all figuring this out. It's an area that is changing so rapidly that, we can put a stake in the ground, but it's going to shift quite quickly. So those that are getting the best results are working hand in hand with their service management provider. So whatever ITSM system they have, they're working very closely in order to understand what are the opportunities, where can we apply this, where are we going to create value. So that partnership is driving that service management provider's long-term vision of what they do with their product. So it's not we're building it, it's we're combining our powers. You get to kind of use our environment as a test site for these ideas that will eventually be baked into the platform. That's where I've seen tremendous results coming back from agentic AI adoption. Then there's the opposite where, companies are just investing in a few use cases to kind of touch, to feel it out. But those really strong partnerships are lending itself to results.
Rahul, is that our experience as well? I think the BVA piece we'll talk about the BVA in a second, but this build versus buy discussion, I know we deal
I
with
think
it.
Yeah, I think it is some part of it is build versus buy, but the most important part is that very strong alignment with the vendor partner. So where we see a lot of goodness coming out is, and this kind of goes a little bit, against the grain of, economies of scope and economies of scale from a product company perspective, is that, forward deployed engineers, right, bring a lot of value in this new world. Okay. So having a team that is, technically very strong, but also at the same time understands the use cases and the business of the customer, and that's golden. Like, we have seen Palantir do this very successfully. We are doing it very successfully, and wherever we are seeing like high adoption, there is an element of, of a vendor being very deeply embedded in that organization's, business processes and working very closely with the team, to the level of the, the senior engineering manager, the help desk manager and others. So totally agree with that. And I think this will continue for some time until we have, standardized it to the extent where, product becomes, to your word, commoditized to some extent, where, which is going to happen. But today's world is very different. That 9% is exactly where we have very strong alignment, even for, like, if we look at across our customer base as well.
Top barrier you have encountered in integrating Agentic AI into ITSM strategy, ROI and use case validation. So that's why, Rahul, you touched on BVA. I know that at Aisera, it has become a pivotal piece in terms of how we show value, but any surprises here for you?
Uh, so it isn't a surprise. I mean, ROI and use case validation, regulatory compliance concerns, these are all important. But one thing that I have heard, and I would have seen that, was expecting to see that here, is the idea that, hey, is my data good enough? Because people have said that, AI is only as good as, the data that I'm feeding into it, right? So I was expecting that to come up. Maybe insufficient knowledge base is sort of, pointing in that direction. But we do get that a lot from, at least, our initial conversations with customers, that you look at tickets, people don't put resolution notes in there. What are you going to learn from, right? That's all in the work notes, right? They don't put a link to the KB article that helped them solve it. Our KB attach rate is really, really low. So all of those things come up. But here's the good thing about AI, right? AI doesn't need a lot of structure around it, right? It doesn't need a lot of structured data. It can infer. It has great powers of inference built into the LLM models themselves, right? So even if it is given a bunch of raw data with some rubric around it that, hey, this is what you are looking for, it's great at that. And that's what we are seeing happen, right? I think the ideal processes themselves, or the ideal structures around help desk management, right? That is also going to change a little bit over time, taking this new reality into account.
Yep. Yep. Julie, any thoughts on this?
One of the benefits to me is consistency. When I talk to organizations about the value of the agentic into the environment, we start thinking about those metrics we talked about earlier, like how many minutes are we saving on a particular transaction? But it's the consistency. It's making sure that the tickets are completely filled out, whereas they hadn't been before. And there's so much value in that consistency and how a workflow is actually executed. That then builds better knowledge for you to build off of. So no matter where you start today, as you begin, that feedback loop starts to create greater value. You get better knowledge. There's a lot of problems that get solved by those early adoption use cases. So this list does not surprise me at all. The top three are definitely. The only one I would say I would think end user resistance might be a little higher from what I hear back from customers. But all in all, this is a very, it's nothing surprising in the list of concerns.
Exactly. So I think in technologies, older technologies, I know people will call me out for that, but technologies like RPA and our one stumbling block for RPA had always been unstructured data. The RPA couldn't handle it. It's a very structured, scripted bot that require structured data to work on. And to Rahul's earlier point, this is where AI should really shine. I think it's getting there. It's not all the way there yet of, being able to understand not just structured data, but unstructured data, going across and crawling across knowledge bases and really putting together, its own corpus of knowledge that is domain specific. That capability itself makes the automation that comes out of agentic AI that much more valuable. So it's a hurdle for old business process and RPA style companies to switch to agentic AI because the starting point was very different. And so I think that will remain a topic of discussion for some time. All right, one more question, I believe. What are the most important ways agent assist solutions could elevate your IT agent productivity? So this is very much agent assist, of course, is a topic. If you talk to anybody in call center world or service desk world, agent assist is a big, big topic there. There's a lot of investment that continues to happen there. Automated workflows, of course, no surprise here. But Julie, in terms of, this is again an area of expertise for you. Any thoughts on uh, automated workflows being the top result here? Does that surprise you or not?
Yeah, I don't, I look at this list and I think this is, where we have always kind of tried to emphasize automation coming into play. The difference is that the automation that we're now looking at is, a lot more powerful than what we did before.
Yeah.
Request is a huge, huge amount of work for most organizations, right? There's a lot of requests coming in. The more that we could create predefined flows and approvals and all these things, it required a lot of human effort to get those workflows mapped out so that they worked effectively. Now, the ability to have decision making in those workflows is pretty powerful. It's not just a designed intent with a response. It's now an intent with, oh, this is what we want. This is the variance here. This is how we can handle it. We're just going to tackle the same list of things that we've been looking for a while with much more powerful technology. But that's kind of a standard list of where we've tried to tackle doing more with less in IT operations for a long time.
What are some of the takeaways we went through? We learned a lot from this survey. There are some surprises. A lot of those results are not really that surprising. Overall, where do you see ITSM going? Um, and,
Yeah.
and of course, the role of agentic AI in all of this.
Yeah, I think one topic that doesn't get talked about enough is the importance of context. Okay, so very recently, I was reading some papers about context engineering. Uh, I started thinking about it a little bit differently. Like you go to ChatGPT and if you ask a question like, "Hey, where is my? I'm seeing error 5,000 in my Phoenix application." It has no idea about what you're talking about. It's going to hallucinate like crazy, right? Because what does Phoenix mean in the context of Acme Corporation? Which is using an application called Phoenix as a logistics kind of application, right? So context is going to be king in agentic AI, and any system, ITSM or enterprise service management in general, has to learn and continuously learn about context from all the unstructured interactions that take place in the organization. So that's going to be key. So so you should always look at a system that takes into account context and grounds the AI based on that organizational context. That's one. The second piece that I find incredibly important and coming up more and more is that the brittleness of existing workflows, right? I mean, that's one of the things I think Julie was also talking about in terms of they're hard to create and they're harder to maintain because processes change. Even a simple request workflow on a service catalog like hardware procurement changes over time as you change your vendors, as something else changes. So we need to give the line of business user a very simple way through natural language. They should be able to say that, hey, this is my standard operating procedure. Oh, and by the way, this has changed now, right? How do I express this so that the AI learns from that very quickly and acts accordingly? right? So that is where I see a lot of potential and a lot of power, right? Which is very different from the workflows, the concept of our workflows and RPA bots that exist today. Okay, so those are the two very important things that we need to keep in mind. And the third one, which is very this is not new. This is going back to that proactive and preemptive stance for the ITSM system. How do we continue to shift this whole service management to the left, going beyond self-service into more of no contact resolution? And that's where the silos that we have put in place between the SRE organization, the DevOps organization, and the ITSM organizations need to go away slowly with agentic AI, essentially taking over that entire value stream and providing a very seamless experience to the employees to get their work done. Essentially, at the end of the day, it should all be about my productivity in the organization without getting bogged down by software issues or hardware issues.
Thank you, Rahul. Julie, it seems like you agree that agentic AI race has begun. So where do you see it culminating?
I agree with everything that was said, but I think I would bring in one other aspect to the conversation, and that is trust.
Yes.
We've just built a new IT operations model where, the movement from reactive to proactive, you're not going to get there if we don't have trust. When you start moving from proactive into allowing systems to begin, taking action themselves, again, there's another trust barrier that needs to be overcome before you will truly be able to transition into the next level. So we have to focus equally on the capabilities and the outcomes, as well as the trust. If the organization doesn't broadly trust, we can't move forward, and we're spinning our wheels. We won't get full investment in the different levels of investing in automation without that trust.
Yeah. I hope this conversation made it a little bit clear that this is still very much the first innings of agentic AI, and especially in the world of ITSM. Sometimes this is attributed to Victor Hugo, sometimes to Bill Gates, but the fact that just like any other technology, we overestimate in the short term and we underestimate in the long term. I think that's very much happening right now. So with that in mind, we'll wrap up with the fact that all of this is available to our audiences. We will send it out to everyone registered as well. But keep an eye on ITSM. This is developing fast. Agentic AI for ITSM is encroaching in everything from HR and facilities to CRM, and you will hear a lot about that in coming weeks as well. But thank you so much for joining, Julie. Thank you for your time, Rahul. Excellent, points of view from what you deal with every day. Joanna, thanks for hosting us. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.